Tracy.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me on the Mastering Business Growth podcast.
Thank you.
Been looking forward to this one because I know just as well with our chat just before we went live as well, there's some really interesting stuff that I definitely want to get into. But for the audience, can you just give us a bit of an intro about yourself, please?
Who I am. Okay, so I'm Tracey Field, mum of 4, grandma of 5, most importantly. Just started my own consultancy business, Tracey Field Consulting Limited. Prior to that, I've worked in the built environment, facilities management, asset and property for the last 25 plus years, overseas, here, historic buildings, local authority. So very vast and varied background, all relating to building management, construction sites, project management, and I'm going to hopefully bring all of that into my new consultancy business.
And how is starting a new business, after a decent career as well, sort of starting afresh, how has that been so far?
So, I've only just started, so I went live at the beginning of May, and it's very surreal. As I was saying earlier, I feel like I'm almost playing at being a business owner or having my own company, and to leave the security of a salaried job that I've done. I'm saying 55 now, and most people are probably winding down now. I'm not in a position to retire, but I do want control of my life. So that's why I've taken the step to do that. And I do think I've got something to offer, more than what I was doing in employment for sure. But it's all the hidden things that I guess you don't know about, isn't it? And all the expenses that come with that of setting everything up, whether that's your website, even, your emails and making sure you can get onto Teams. All of these things are now business rates, not personal, So yeah, it's a bit of a steep learning curve, and I'm busy every day just on background stuff. Just, I didn't have anything set up before I went live. I left my job and then went straight in. So I'm learning as I go to a point, and I have a plan of what I want to do and things I want to focus on to get those bits done first and move forward. But yeah, just take each day as it comes really. But it's given me the freedom for sure to be able to do some other things and spend time with my family and the grandchildren that I want to do too. That's
really nice. I think it is trying to create that, I don't want to use the word balance, but, have harmony.
Exactly.
In your life, but that was actually a friend of mine who actually said, I don't believe in work-life balance, but work-life harmony, the two phrase. Working together.
Yeah.
And doing that sort of later on in your career, that's quite daunting, that, isn't it? Because you do have other priorities.
Yeah, well, this is it, isn't it? I'm in a fortunate position of where I live and all my family are around me, but I like to support them as well when I can with, looking after the children. Like even yesterday, my daughter got school open evening. Mum, can you come over? And you can just do that. I can just go and do that. But it is of not knowing when I'm going to get paid next, and it's all on me to do that. I was saying to you earlier about someone said, you can always get a job somewhere else, and say, I don't want to look at a plan B, because my plan is the one that's going to work, and that's what I will make work, and if I earn less than I did before, so be it. If I earn the same or more, then great. But to me, it's not even about the money side necessarily. It's all about, like you say, this harmony of doing what I love, but also be able to do the other things that I love too.
That's the thing, and I think that's quite important, and that definitely comes out from the chats we were having beforehand as well. So let's go back to the beginning of your career, because I know you've had quite a you've got a lot of experience with what you're going into now, but also with construction as well. So let's go back to the beginning, and what were you doing then?
Okay, so I had my family when I was young. So done all sorts of odd jobs then, even including like a traffic warden. I was
for your sins.
Yeah. That was a very violent job, that was, yeah. All sorts happened on that one. But no, I knew I wanted to go into the built environment, construction generally. So I first actually started off in a call centre for a local authority, taking the repairs calls, thinking I'll start to learn about terminologies and things like that. And then studied, shadowed maintenance officers that were there, and followed them around, got experience, done some qualifications. A job came up, a new role as a voids manager, so managing all the empty properties, turning them around, getting them repaired and such. And I got that position, and I've just sort of gone from there really. So carried on learning, done my construction management degree. I went from there into another housing association, then got a job with the Bedford Estates in Woburn. So that was great. So managed the stone replacement of Woburn Abbey, which was an amazing project. Done loads of projects at Woburn Safari Park, Bear House, Elephant House, all sorts of things in the park, just random things to be involved in. And then I went to work for the Royal Household. So my first project was overseeing the refurbishment of Kensington Palace when Kate and William got married. So on my first day, it was, here's Kate, and showing, we laugh about it. Me and my friend Emma always laughs, like, where do you want your sockets? We're just marking the walls of things. But that was a great job. But it's an old man's institution, is the Royal Household, particularly in the maintenance side of things and the property side. And then I went and worked local authority then as asset and property manager, but then went over to the Falkland Islands and worked there, managed projects like widening the airport taxiways, refurbishments of buildings, and then went into a business development type role because I started to notice that lots of processes and procedures weren't right. The client wasn't happy, and the company who I was working for, we were failing in so many areas. We were at risk of losing the contract. Wow. So I started to put things together and actually put together a complete project process using RIBA, Royal Institute of British Architects standards. It was rolled out all across the South Atlantic to use. So that was really good. So my shift sort of turned from, I'd always done the paperworky strategy side and the building side, but it sort of shifted a bit more to now just the strategic side of things, doing that. But then my contract finished there. I could have stayed on, but I got offered a position in Nigeria. So I went over to Lagos. I was there for 3 years. I was the planning and development manager there, and oversaw a team to develop this island in Lagos. So
what were you doing with did your family come with you?
No, I went over on my own. So I've travelled a lot on my own actually, with work-wise. So when I was in the Falklands, the rotations were awful. You're virtually 6 months away and then maybe a month at home. But I did spend a lot of the time travelling around. So I went to Antarctica while I was there, done South America and that while I was there. My husband at the time he came out to the Falklands. He'd done the same when I was in Nigeria. So, there was opportunity to go out, but the rotations in Nigeria were much better. I was home every 6 weeks. So that was a much better one, but it's just the experience.
You got to see the world though.
Do you know what?
Some of it.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think when the Falklands came up, I remember talking to one of my daughters and said, I've got something to tell you. I've got a new job. And she said, well, what is it like, 1,000 miles away? I was like, no, 8,000 miles away.
Close, but
yeah. And there was no internet. It was, it took ages before, you even got internet going. It's hard.
Satellite phones, I guess.
They had that. I mean, you could have your phone, but you had to use the military service for calling home and stuff. I mean, it's not that long ago. It was only like 2014.
Oh, right, okay,
I mean, yeah, it's just how it is there that there's, the infrastructure isn't the same as it is here. So it was hard, but it is just life experiences, aren't they? You're never going to get without, being brave, I guess, and taking a step and doing that. And same thing, if I didn't like it, I'll just come home. But I actually loved it. I got right into the Falklands, off-roading and bought myself a car and all sorts. So
it's one of those careers, though, as well. It's one of those jobs where you can't be remote.
No.
You can't be.
You couldn't do it working from the UK and doing it. You had to be there on the ground. But it's great because I worked with the military, so DIO, Defence Infrastructure Organisation. So even understanding how they done things and learning from the way they manage things, you pick up so many different, improved ways of working by working with others, learning from others. There's always something, to learn differently and looking at something different. So that gave me that. And then moving to Nigeria to work there, I had an apartment over there and that was all fine. But again, just another way of working and, with different types of people and what they expect and, how their lifestyles are. It makes you appreciate what you've got for sure.
Yeah.
It is a change. But then when I decided, I then moved up to the northeast and loved it so much, decided that I'll not work away anymore. I'll settle. And that's when I got a job at Bishop Chadwick Catholic Education Trust. So I went there as the estates manager for, I think it was 8 schools when I joined, but it was 30 over a very short period of time. So went into that. So that, again, all of the estate management, strategic side, plus the operational bits to start, because it was just me. So so vast amount of experience, whether it's project management, clerk of works, quality assurance, putting asset management plans together, estate strategies, visions, all of that, all of the knowledge over the years has all, I think, led me to the point of actually I feel I do have something to offer,
nice.
Going forward.
And that's what you're going into now.
That's it, yeah.
So just for the purposes of the audience, what is it that, so that they can understand, how would you put what you're doing now into sort of layman's terms for me to understand as well, actually?
Sure. So, I mean, from education side of things, it's supporting with estate management plans, estate strategy, vision, understanding your estate and how best to manage it going forward. I think there's a huge gap in experience and guidance. There is DFE guidance, but even that is a nightmare to work through.
DFE being?
Sorry, the Department for Education. So there is guidance around that. Project management, so managing a project from inception to completion, or midway through if there's a problem, and making sure that you get what you're expecting to get at the end of it and all the stages managed through. Quality assurance, ensuring that things are done to the high standard of how they're going to be. Training and CPDs is going to be a big part of what I do. I'm just going through my CPD accreditation now, so all the training courses that I'm offering will be actually CPD accredited.
Fantastic.
Rather than just, I've written them, they must be good. They're actually being verified by somebody by the CPD Association to make sure that they deliver that. So that's sort of what I'm doing, is bits in between that, but they're the bulk areas, I guess, of what I'll be giving. And
what does an ideal client look like for you then? Just so I can envision it in my mind.
Yeah. So from an education point of view, and I guess that's the one naturally I'm gravitating to, because that's my last experience and where I realise there's such a huge gap of experience and information. So it would be an estate manager, perhaps, new into a role of needing support to be able to do that. I'm actually doing that for somebody for Esteem Multi-Academy Trust. So the estate manager they've got is more operational. So, the strategic side doesn't come easy. So that will be a coaching through of putting in some stages of how to work through it. So that'll be from there. It could be that an organisation doesn't have a main estates manager or somebody who manages the assets of their company, whether that's local authority, whether that's a private organisation with assets, or in the education sector. So and it will be those that, from a caretaker upwards, who's looking for support, growth, to learn and to develop their career perhaps, and and work through those. But project wise could be anybody. So whether it's a retail contractor or a general builder who needs somebody they might do the building side of it, and the client they don't want to manage it themselves. They want somebody to do it for them. So I can do that. And again, even for, there's the potential for, a person who wants a building work done but doesn't know enough about building. Are they getting ripped off? Are they getting what they should be getting? And that's where that quality assurance and that clerk of works side comes in, of monitoring works as we're going. So quite a broad range, to be honest.
I was going to say it's really broad and really quite holistic in how you help, isn't it?
Yeah.
I guess something that always comes to mind for me when I think of Department for Education or just any kind of local authority, government, is costs.
Yes.
There's a lot of money being wasted that we see within government.
Definitely.
I think I heard a stat that 45% of our economy now is government spending, and it's government spending into local authorities, and it's mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing, because clearly that's not going to work long term.
It's not.
So with that in mind, obviously I know you're not working for the government, you're working for yourself, but that's got to be top of mind in terms of spending culture within these local authorities.
I think it is. And when it comes to the property side of things and managing your estate, managing the assets, there's so much wasted money on reactive repairs. So something goes wrong, knee-jerk reaction, we just fix it without looking at the longer term plan, which is where I'll come in to say, well, actually, we've fixed this tap 5 times already. We should just replace it. Very small, example there. But you could go with a roof, couldn't you? We just keep doing all these little patch repairs. Actually, this needs some bigger capital investment. But often the capital isn't there because it's not been planned for in advance, because there isn't a good enough plan. People don't know what their estate looks like. They don't know what condition it's in. And they certainly haven't put a plan together of how are we going to spend this money wisely. And then there is wasted money, sure, on consultants, and contractors of paying for things twice, or not understanding what you really need and therefore what you should be procuring. So if you don't understand what you want at the end of it, what you should be getting at the end of it, it's hard then to think about, am I getting value for money in the steps? And so you waste money going to someone, actually, that wasn't what we needed. Go to somewhere else, no, that's not what we needed. So, it's educating from the start point of actually just, let's draw a line, start from scratch. Let's build it up from here and understand what your estate looks like, and how we can best support that with the very limited resources. Talking education here of that is given to schools to manage a very old school estate generally.
Yeah. And I was just thinking then as well, the difference between, sort of state school and private education.
Yes.
And the changes that have come in now from the Labour government, adding VAT, even the private schools are going to be pushed now, aren't they, to make every penny count? Every penny count and spend it, spend it and there's
wisely.
some of the oldest establishments as well, aren't they?
I know. And the thing is that such little maintenance has been done over time because money's been spent in the wrong areas, potentially, not all schools, but, certainly it's lovely to have nice wallpaper and all the rest of it. But if the plaster's blown behind it, we're, a bit stuck. But I think it is about whether it is, local authority funded school, whether, it's MAT and government, funded through their budget allocations. All of them need to know what they've got, how can they manage it, and and again, even schools that have get project allocated money, so they'll make a bid for funding, they'll get that, they'll have a project. It still needs managing. Generally, staff don't have all of the the skill set to project manage and do something else. There's not many of us that have got the wide experience, from all sectors, whether that's the project side, the estate side, the asset management side, and be able to pull all of those in together. So you do see it as holistically rather than just looking at one strand of work there. And
I guess bringing someone like yourself in is, in the long run, it's going to save them so much money.
This is it, isn't it? Yeah. And also I'll question, because I've worked in the environment, I understand a lot more from that. And saying, I've worked, military environment, I understand that background. I've worked local authority. I understand the governance around all of these areas. I've worked for a main contractor. I've been the client. I've done every side of it you could do, so I can look at it from every angle. So I'll know main contractor. I know the tricks that are there because I've been on that side. So you can see it from both ways to get the best for the client ultimately.
Talk to me about bureaucracy, because again, education, I just think of red tape. I think of all the, excuse me for saying this, but pencil pushes, essentially, that everybody has to go through, the hoops they have to jump through just to get a bit of funding, just to get that money that's going to clearly help the environment that the children learn in, or adults learn in as well. Yeah,
I mean, that's ultimately what it's for, isn't it? To create the best environment for, students, learners to be in. There is a lot of governance and bureaucracy around it, and proving why you need to spend the money that you do need to. And I agree with it to a point, that there has to be an audit trail through, doesn't they, to qualify why you're spending it on that and not on that. Could the things be sped up? For sure. If I take, carbon funding for schools, so there needs to be, reductions in use, and going into more sustainable environmental options. And the government do have funding routes called PSDS and SALIX. They have these, but the process to apply for the funding is crazy. The amount of information and ultimately the amount of money a school or a trust would have to spend on gathering that information with no guarantee that you're going to get it at the end. And what they give you is such a tiny amount that actually is not going to be impactful anyway, So I think where money is put to, what ends up happening is the bigger trusts get them. So NHS trusts, who are maybe a bit more geared, they've got the staff and the resources in to do that, tend to be more successful on these things. And so you do see that actually that school still hasn't got what it's got because it doesn't have the people in place to be able to get the information together. They don't have the time or know what's needed to be done, so they miss out. So I think funding could be organised better and made more simpler, if that's a word, simpler, to make the process easier and more accessible for people to go to. But in terms of governance in schools and that process, whether it's clearance from the CEO, the CFO, and then the trustees, and all the way it goes through, there has to be something, and it's all governed by, at the trust handbook of what those rules are, and it has to be there because it's a business, isn't it?
Well,
it's ultimately a business and has to be accountable.
Yeah, I'd say most aren't being run as such.
No.
Just from what I see.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a business at the end of the day, and it needs to grow. It needs to, make a return, and be profitable so that they can reinvest that profit back into maintaining the property and the environment. What's the general demographic of an estates manager at a school or an education environment now? Is it like a dying occupation? Are there less and less people coming through, or what's the general?
I don't think people train to be an estates manager or a head of estates. That I don't think there's a course that is specifically for that. Some come from a facilities management background, so managing from that side. I know some that have been engineers in a past life and come through. It is one of those roles, depending on whether you're on the operational side or you are strategic, of where you can come from. So you could have from a site staff going through the ranks potentially to that, as long as that support and training is in place. But there is no, as far as I'm aware, a course that is, become an estates manager, do this course and you'll be a qualified estates manager, because there's so many different skill sets that are involved. And that's why I think if you talk to lots of estates managers in education, they all come from a very varied background, which is great to have everyone in a room because you'll all come from different things, which is where I'm a little bit different, because I almost come from all of those backgrounds into my own, rather than, I worked as a project manager and I've come into estates where I've done all of those roles, whereas most estates managers have done one of that type of background and then gone into estates management.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking like how you come in and help that person, create holistic skills, widen their skill set, because like you say, there's no courses out there for that, potentially something that, you can create as a business as well. But, when you come in and you're dealing with these people who haven't necessarily trained for that role, but it's something that they've potentially fallen into or, seen the opportunity in. What is it exactly that you're looking for in an estates manager or a facilities manager that you just know you're going to be able to succeed? Like what does that look like?
I think one's a lot about the person, for sure.
Most is, isn't it?
Exactly that. You always say that you can teach anything, but your personality and your attitude, etc.
Being coachable, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, it's all about that. But I think you need to be able to remove yourself from the weeds of what's going on and look at it from a higher level. You need to be able to detach yourself. It's very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day moanings and rumblings of what happens in schools. You need to be able to step away from that and look at things, a little bit differently, and pick out those pain points and be able to work to each of those and have be a bit more structured. I mean, strategy can be taught, I think, but it's very hard, I think, if you've always been in the weeds of a job and an operational side, to step into that management side then, and then actually that's for somebody else to do. I'm just going to, focus on what I need to do, and that will filter through. So I think it is all about, and I think it can be taught. There's people that I know. I mean, my assistant estates manager, as it was when I was at Bishop Chaddock, he started off as a site manager and just saw something in him that I know that he's going to do really well. He applied for the job of assistant estates manager, and he does really well in that. He just now needs the coaching and support to be able to step by step be a bit more involved in the strategy of one thing, and then just grow it. So it's just slowly. I think throwing somebody straight into strategic high level management who's never done it before is a absolute recipe for disaster. And quite possibly there is a bit of that around.
So a bit of hands-on beforehand, doing the graft, as they say, and then you've got the foundation.
You've got the foundation, I think. And always, I mean, I always say you don't know everything. Just don't be afraid to say, I've never seen that before, don't know what that is, don't know how to do that. There's no shame in that at all. But I think having for the lady I'm working with at Esteem, it's like I've put in a staged process through. So let's start with this bit. let's get this to where it needs to be, and then we'll move on to the second stage. So get that groundwork done, get all the underpinning knowledge in, and then you can start moving through.
You mentioned the word process, and that was going to be something I was going to ask you about, actually. Do you see, I don't want to say a template or a cookie cutter process or, approach, but are there certain trends? Are there certain stages that these estates need to go through in order to achieve, what you would deem as a good outcome? So is it like, is it a 4 or 5 step plan, or are there a set of principles that you believe in? Like what are those? So
the Department for Education, the DfE, have a set of guidance called GEMS, Good Estate Management for Schools. So they have a guide. I think I said earlier, it's like going through treacle to get through it. It is okay, but if you've never worked in education before and that's your first thing going in, is hard one. So there is definitely a step by step. And the first thing is just to understand, what have you got? What are the buildings? Who owns them? What's the leases? What's the age of them? What's the condition of them? All of these things. What's the school numbers? What's the pupil numbers? Are they up, down, where they should be? Understand what you've got from the start. Before you do anything else, you need to know what you've got. And that's the big step that everybody misses. And they go straight into
of the land. What is
and they
it
go straight into, let's fix this, let's do that. And I'm like, just stop. You need to stop and go back to this point. You can't develop a strategy for your estate or for anywhere without knowing actually what do you have.
So you need to audit.
100% all the way through. Yeah, but really thoroughly in every aspect. And it takes time and it takes money to do that, but it will save you in the long run, because without that information, you are just, you're just knee-jerk reacting to everything, really. It's hard to plan. You can't plan without knowing.
So I've audited my estate. What do I do next?
Okay, so you audit, we're going to put it into priorities.
Right.
So what's the thing that keeps you awake at night, maybe from all of that? What if you're looking at schools? What would be the highest risk item that would potentially cause that school to close? So we obviously want schools to be open, and we're looking at health and safety risks as well. So what's the next thing is, what's the highest priority of what we need to do and why, and then we're going to risk that through all the way through. That's fine if you've got one school. When you've got like 10, 20, 30 schools, it's a massive job. So some sort of RAG rating or system for.
Well, I'm just imagine like the Eisenhower matrix, like important, urgent, important, not urgent.
Yeah,
that kind
and that's
of thing.
it. So you can do it as simple as that. I mean, there are There are guidance ones out. So the Department for Education, they do something called CDC, so condition data collection surveys. And within that, they have a framework of working. So it has A to D on condition, and it has like an X, Y, Z, and an E, which is the type of it. So E would be environmental, and you've got health and safety operational. So you chart them between the two. So it could be an A for the condition, meaning it's absolutely fine, but it's E for environmental, or I don't know, it's a health and safety. And you might factor actually, it seems all right, but it's a health and safety one. So even though it's an A, that still needs to be above, something else that might be with it. So it can't just be, it's not quite as simple as,
important. Very
I mean, it is.
yeah.
I mean, it is simple like that, but there needs to be more background into it. So but plotting it all out first.
Yeah,
for sure.
that makes sense actually, because thinking about something that might be structurally okay.
Yes.
But actually, there's no ventilation, or some things happen to it where.
So you don't want any health and safety risk. You don't want the school to be closed. You don't want any impact where it's going to damage your reputation.
Yeah.
But saying health and safety and school closing, always the top, and compliance, obviously, for legal compliance of things you need to do. So I would go through. So we've done our list, go through those. Is there any that's not meeting legislative compliance right now? Because they are an absolute must. So does a school not have an asbestos management plan? Like now, so you need to go through in a structured way, and get all of those out. And then once we've done all of that, we can start putting that into a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 3 year plan.
So you're creating a time horizon for the
absolutely
stuff
are.
to be done. Right.
And your strategy will then back that up of, this is what our estate is. This, these are all the conditions of our estate. This is where we've prioritised because of, this is our rationale because of it, and this is how we're going to meet it. But I think it's really important that within all of this, we're talking all buildings and assets, people. They have to come into it too. So you can't do all of this and leave your staff behind of not training them as to why we're doing what's being done, what support do they need. So everyone should be along on this journey of finding out what you've got. So that includes doing an audit of your staff. What learning do they have? Where do they want to go? What needs to be in place to be able to do that? And ultimately, they will then manage your estate better, for all of that. So I think it's always forgotten, the people are very important.
I think that's a really good point, because they often get overlooked, don't they, in the school? They're the ones that have to run it day by day and be a part of it.
Exactly.
And, they're part of the culture of the estate and the school. And
I think if you have one estate manager who's doing all of this and almost acting in silo and just doing all of that, but not bringing people with them, it's not going to end well. It might be okay for a year, but ultimately you're putting more pressure on yourself as an estate manager by not utilising the real valid support that's out there, and people who do want to learn and grow and improve. And we all want to learn something, don't we? Not everyone aspires to be a CEO, but there's still a lot to be said for just improving your knowledge and being involved in some other things maybe, and taking the some of the pressure off of an estates manager.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, like I say, people often get overlooked, especially when you're dealing with a smaller school, like a primary school or whatever. And I just know from experience that there's usually like a business manager who's taking care of all of that, and there might be the business manager and then just a maintenance person.
And you wait till one of them is off.
And it all falls apart. It all falls apart.
We always say caretaker, cook, business manager, you can't do without them. That's when the head goes, oh, they're not here today, what are we going to do?
What was happening, I think it might have been a year or two ago, around all the schools with a certain type of concrete?
Oh, RAC, reinforced aerated autoclaved concrete.
Right. There you go.
There you go. Word of the day.
Yeah, absolutely, what was happening with all of that, and how's that affected how estates are looking at their facilities?
That's pretty much dealt with, really. So it became apparent that lots of schools, lots of local authority buildings were built with this method. So it's a concrete that was, the way it was mixed created bubbles in it, if you like, and it had I think like a 25-30 year lifespan, and there was a failure somewhere, and then that highlighted the fact that, oh my goodness, we've got this in lots of places. So all schools were asked to carry out or complete forms and carry out surveys if needed. Have they got RAC in their schools? Do they think they've got RAC in their schools? When I was at Bishop Chadwick, I think we had 3-4 schools affected, which was originally it's fine, we can prop the ceilings, do all these things and work around it. And then it was no, all schools are closing. If you've got in there, they're closing. The DfE actually were very good of supporting that and getting schools to where they need to be. Some schools ended up on the school rebuilding programme because it was too significant. Other schools had, so like one at Bishop Chadwick, got complete roof replacements and things like that. Significant volumes of work, and that would have been a complete unknown to a lot of people, you know, of not even hearing what RAC is, let alone knowing, well, what do I do with it now? Yeah. So these curveballs throw in. That's why it's important to keep up to date with legislation and all of that as well. So and your training and learning. Yeah,
that's why I brought it up, because you just don't know what's going to be around the corner. What you know, a school that was built 100 years ago.
Oh yeah,
like you don't know what's going to be. You know, the next on the chopping list in terms of regulations and health and safety procedures and things, and you've got to be prepared.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where I guess someone like yourself comes in.
Yeah, and just to try and keep up to date with constant changes. And when you're working, you know, 35, 40 hours a week or more, because generally the job calls for more hours than that, if you're trying to spend some of time on your own of keeping up to date with new things coming in, keeping your CPD up to date, it's really, those are the things that tend to end up falling by the wayside. So, you know, it's important to try and keep up to date with things, or call on somebody who who will put you right, even if it is just a phone call for some advice. Have you heard about, do you know about, or what is this, can you help? And I'm more than happy to do that for anybody, because ultimately you just want to make sure that, you know, our young people are getting the best education they can. And so, you know, that's what we'll do.
So if someone wants to sort of inquire about working with you and bringing you in, like what's the logical first step for them to be able to do that?
Well, just give me a call, just reach out. I'm very approachable. Very approachable, and we could just have a chat about what you want, because what you think you might need, by the time we've spoken about all of it, might not actually be what it is. And I certainly wouldn't provide a service that I didn't think was necessary if there was another way of doing it. So it would be, well, actually, what is it you're trying to achieve? Or if they don't know, you know, let's see where you are now and put that plan together. So for me, it would be a discussion about all of those things, and then coming up with, you know, with what works for that, you know. And if it's managing a project of, you know, how long is it? How long do you need me for? Is it an everyday? Is it, you know, once a week check-in? You know, do you need reporting back? So yeah, just that open conversation, just complete open, honest, straightforward of, you know, what do you need? How can I best support that? And, you know, and saying that, and I'm not out to make a quick buck here from anybody. This is about passing on knowledge that I've got, you know, and supporting, you know, as I go.
And you're writing a book as well, aren't you?
I am writing. So one of 2 books is my professional book. So that is around managing an education estate. So when I first went into estates management for education, never worked in the sector before. And it was like, I'm completely lost. Governance, finance, like, what do you do? And where is information to help? And there's very little out there. And I just thought, God, it'd be great if I had like a little pocketbook guide for this. So there's like an architect's pocketbook guide, there's a QS pocketbook guide. Like, where's the estate manager's pocketbook guide? And there isn't one. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to write one. So,
and how far into that process are you?
So I'd finished it. It was about 35,000 words. Finished this book. I was in first drafting of that. My plan originally was I'll just put it out as a little ebook. And then it grew like to this 35,000.
It's not a little ebook.
Right? Not now, 35,000 words. So it grew from that. And then I thought, well, I'll just self-publish. And I thought, you know what, I've not even given myself a chance to see whether a publisher would want it. So I reached out and they want it, right?
Wow. Brilliant.
So I'm like, oh my goodness. But they've asked me, can I make it, asked to vary it rather than just tailored at estate managers. And I was already thinking about doing that based on other conversations I'd had. So I've gone back to it now, and it'll be around probably 55,000 words by the time I've finished. But it's now not only got estate manager insights, it'll have CEO insights, CFO. So it literally links everybody into their part, governor, trustee insights, into how they all play a part in each section of this, of managing an education estate. So a real holistic view, guidebook that you could pick up at any chapter. I don't know what about this. So you pick up at this chapter and there'll be templates in there as well. So guidance templates to do something. So no one needs to reinvent the wheel. So it's always done somewhere, isn't it? Where I've got that. So this book, so I'm planning to get that out for the summer.
Great.
And then hopefully, people buy that but it will support them going into, especially into the new term, for them to have that ready for September to start. If you're new into education or if you've been in it for years, I still think it will be a benefit. And like I say, not just estate managers, senior leaders, whether it's a CFO, the CEO, there's loads of things in there, and hopefully people will get something from that, of all my knowledge that I've pulled in, everything I wish somebody would have told me and more that I've learned along the way, of best practice. And we don't all need to make the same mistakes. I've done them. So let's learn from that.
I often find that when I'm speaking to people who've written a book, it's the outpouring of all their knowledge, and but it's also the outpouring of everything they wish they could have had in a really nice structured way. Like you say, just flip it open to any chapter and be able to understand it. Want a template? There it is. Yeah, exactly. And I think that'll be a game changer for your business as well.
Well, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so. I mean, I am passionate about estates management. And even though I was an education estates manager for 4 years, but estates is my background in a general way. But I don't know, something hit me going into the education sector and I think there's things in the book that maybe they're questions that people think I better not ask that because they'll think I'm really stupid. Do you know? Like they are from very basic all the way through. So I'm hoping people will get something from it. Some of my training will be linked around within the book as well.
But it's an asset for your business.
Absolutely, it's an asset for the business, and that's it. Whether it will lead to be able to do, speaking at events from that as well. I mean, of course, it's is a big driver for me. So there's a couple of things I'm focusing on as I start my business, and the book is a priority to make sure I finish. But I don't want to rush it. I've not rushed it at all. No. It's it's one that's got to be done right. And I'm really proud actually of when I'd finished my first draft at the 30,000 words. I mean, I had a little tear, to be honest, thinking, when you put that last full stop, thinking, my God, I've, even if no one ever read it, I've written a book. Yeah. Do it's a mad thing because I'm not a writer. That's not my background at all. It's just something I thought.
But you've been able to, someone I know, Lucy McCarra, she does publishing, and she's written books about writing books, and she says it's about mining your expertise. You think of it as like gold, and you're mining at it, and it's just like whether you're a writer or not, you've got the expertise up there. It's just getting it out,
putting it on the paper, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, when I first started, it was like, I don't know, it just flows, and then. Yeah, so I had all my chapters structured, how I wanted to do it. So I had my little plan out, and and I put times against myself of what I'm doing, But I'm super proud of where it is. I'm glad I'm amending it, so it's not just aimed at estate managers, but it's much broader. Say whether you're a caretaker or whether you're the CEO or whether you're on the board of directors, you'll find some value in that for sure, and so hopefully give some momentum also to my business as I move forward.
Before we start to sort of get to the end of this, I want to talk about what you've seen, like in terms of from the very beginning of your career to where you are now, the steps in all the companies that you've worked with, all the estates that you've managed as well. Like, what are the key drivers of success? I mean, this is for the audience, this is all about business growth. What are the 3 or 4 principles, even 5 principles that you've seen that really do contribute towards business growth and business success? Yeah,
I think for me, obviously just starting off on the journey, but using the knowledge from a place of employment and the work that I've done.
Which can't be ignored because you've got lots of it.
Lots of experience of that. One, I guess I've only just really learnt this one, it's back yourself. Absolutely back yourself. Have faith that you do know, they call it imposter syndrome, whether you believe it's a thing or not. But no one's going to back you if you don't believe in yourself and what you can offer. So I think that's been a hard lesson along the way, and I'm certainly backing myself right now.
So you should as well, because clearly this has been an education for me, excuse the pun, but like it really has. Like I had no clue about the depth of that kind of estates management. So you should back yourself.
Thank you.
Clearly.
I think not giving in and being persistent.
Persistence, yeah.
Yeah. Not being afraid to try new things. So diversify, put yourself out there. Don't listen to what others say about what you're doing that for. Why would you go there? If I'd done that, I wouldn't have gone to the Falklands. I wouldn't have gone to Nigeria. I maybe wouldn't have moved up to the northeast. There's everything happens for a reason. Maybe. I don't think so. People say, oh, you've been really lucky. No. I've worked blooming hard. I've worked really hard. And I think that is a solid principle of work hard, know where you want to go. But don't work so hard that you forget about all of the other things and why you're doing it and why it matters. And that's one of the big driving things of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I was saying about that harmony. So certainly of not forgetting the bigger picture as to what it's all for. No one wants to work and just, an early grave and you've spent no time with your family or done the nice things you want to do or go away by yourself or whatever else you want to do. So I guess don't, if someone says no, question it. And I think don't be afraid to change tack. So writing my book, for example, I'm writing it one way, spoke to people, looked at it myself, but actually this isn't where the direction it needs to be. So my daughter laughs at the word, but pivot.
Don't be afraid to pivot. Yeah, absolutely.
Don't be afraid to do that. So I think, backing yourself, having that tenacity and that drive and ambition, but seek help where you can. There's no shame in that, is there? Of saying, I need someone's support to do this, or can you give me a hand with this? Can you hear me listen to this? And what do you think? And get that feedback. And listen, ultimately it's your decision, isn't it? What you do. But I think if you've got a good reasoning as to why, it should be fine.
I think that's really important, actually, what you were saying about, don't be, try not to listen too much to the naysayers and the noise. Usually you'll never really get criticism from those that are a bit further ahead from you. It's usually those that are a bit sort of further behind or haven't taken that step. It's, if someone's calling you out or criticizing you, it's because they're afraid to take the step themselves.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Because you'll like I say, from what I've seen, you never really get criticism from those who are further ahead from you, because they just don't care, really.
No,
why would
more
they?
More supportive, aren't they? Really,
absolutely, they are as well.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, I told all my children when I said I'm just listen for a second, but I'm going to leave my job and I'm going to start on my own. And every one of them was like, "That's amazing. It's absolutely brilliant," So it's nice, isn't it, that your nearest and dearest are supportive of that, because
they're the ones that matter.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what you're doing it for. But it is. But I mean, most people have been. I mean, someone did say to me, well, "What are you going to do?" Like when I said I'm going on my own, what are you going to do? Like, well, if I've got to explain it to you, then I really don't need to be honest. But
exactly.
So I know what I can bring.
And you're doing it for you as well,
exactly
though, aren't you?
that. 100%. Yeah. So just a bit more control of what I'm doing, and work on. So I say my book. If I was working full time, you don't get the time to do that properly, and so it is really important for me to get that one out.
You're putting the time in to build an asset that is going to, it can be distributed everywhere.
Imagine that.
You can be having again a mentor that was in our business for a long time. He's a big believer in writing books, and he's just like, it's like having a coffee meeting,
right?
But without the coffee. It's like someone's able to understand what you're about, and you'll find once you release it, people will be getting in contact with you for sure. Speaking of contact, because we are coming to the end, but how can people find you online?
So I do have a website, so traceyfieldconsulting.com.
Nice. Nice and simple.
Nice
and
like simple.
It. That's always a fan of a simple domain name. Yeah.
So that's that. My email is the same. Well, Tracey at traceyfieldconsulting.com. And do you want my phone number?
We'll leave that one for now. Let people reach out to you for that one.
Absolutely, they will. But no, via my website or contact me from email. I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Always happy to have a chat. And like I say, even if you want to chat, you don't necessarily think you want a paid service, but you need some advice, or you just want to, a call to run something by of what you should do. I'm honestly happy to support the best I can.
Fantastic. This was really good.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed that. Loads of value in there, and some things that I certainly didn't know about the industry. So it was quite an education for me as well. But thank you so much for coming on. This has been great.
Thank you very much indeed.